Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming to our webinar. My name is Matt McLaughlin. I am one of the staff developers here at the IU. Our topic today is, for this webinar, is going to be algebraic thinking and how we can incorporate that into what we are doing. So one of the things I did want to make sure to say to everyone is that we as a group have had the pleasure of working with everyone. This has been a team effort, as is our LearnOn website, and it is extremely important to us that it is a team effort and that everyone gets noticed for what they've been doing and all the work that's been going on. So as we look at this webinar, you'll notice that your chat, your mic, and the camera has been disabled. We do these webinars for large groups and small groups, so we wanted to make sure that the large size room that this one is in has everything available to them, that we're looking at you to use the question and answer located right here for any meetings or any questions that you have. That'll make it so it's visible to everyone. And that if you would like to use the microphone, which in this small group is definitely something we can do, please raise your hand. We can give you the power over the mic. And at the very end, there's going to be a link both in the slide deck and on the chat for Act 48 credits. So please wait to the end and you can get Act 48 for this. We are going to be going through the Act 48. We also ask that you complete the evaluation at the end as well. And please remember that we always have the webinar archives at LIU LearnOn recordings, bit.ly. And that is a location where you can find all of the work that we've been doing over the last week and a half for all of our webinars and all of our ways to support you. Finally, there's the resource site where we have a lot of information out there for almost any content and ways to teach during this period. As we move from giving instruction face-to-face to online learning, we really need to worry about what our continuity of education plans are. That is, what is your district saying that they are going to do? There's a couple different options or a mix of options that they can do. That we really consider FAPE in our online instruction, that all students should have equal access to these opportunities, whether it's a disability or possibly a lack of internet connection, that we want to make sure everyone has at least access to the same opportunities. And that's one of the big things we are looking at. So one of the things we keep saying is less is more. The less we give, the more we'll probably get out of it. Prioritize what we need to do, chunk your instruction, and balance what the expectations are across the board. Video is extremely important. It's one of the reasons I have my video on right now, is that that social emotional learning piece of seeing people's face and seeing people is so important, especially as we are in this stay home system. Limit length. We don't want anything more than about 6 minutes for students. We want to try to make sure that we have short video clips that are highly impactful. So really limit the length and the expectations of what you're looking for when students are watching or listening a video. Be clear. Start with the objectives and expectations first. We want people to really understand why we're doing this and what we're expecting for them to get out of it. We want to really look at how long it takes to complete a task. When we get back to less is more, if we're thinking tasks, we can take what we think to do, divide it by 2, then divide it by 2 again, and you're probably where students are. Finally, organize and sequence instruction. That's going to be really key to all of this. And make sure that things are in checklists and are step-by-step so that things are very, very clear. So our 2 goals today are going to be to identify the ways to support algebraic thinking. And this is a very broad webinar. So we are going to give you the broad information today and some resources you can use. But following this, we also have office hours. You can find the link in the schedule where both myself and Corinne Connor, who is the other tack on this, is going to be available to really talk a little bit more deeply and solve and be a thought partner and solve problems with you. So the first question is, what is algebra? And when we take all the different definitions of algebra, this is a word map of those definitions. We have so many different things that fit within algebra, but when we break it down, algebra is all about relationships. And we need to connect students to identify relationships between numbers and make sure that we are very clear about what those relationships mean for students. So when we're talking our young kids, building in the concept of understanding the relationship between different pieces is very key. When we talk about our older students, equations are just relationships, and we can show these different pieces graphically. We can show them through worked problems. We can show them multiple ways to find answers. And it is understanding all of those different relationships that is so important. And if we can pull the idea that an equal sign is not the end of a problem, but is a symbol within the problem that relates to this side of the problem being equal to this side of the problem, even at the youngest of ages, that is so important, because that decreases the stress of students when they start getting into those higher level thinking. So one of the things that we wanted to do is start talking patterns, having students identify patterns, having them see, okay, how do these patterns work? And that identification of patterns and identification of what's there builds the concept of number sense. Number sense is this concept that we all say kids need number sense, but we want them to understand the relationships and the way problems work. So we may look at number sense as solving various problems or showing multiple representations of problems. It's one of the reasons why in a lot of textbooks they give 3 or 4 ways to solve something, because that is so important. When we get into each of these pieces, we may look at the K2 world as fact families. So we give them that an addition of 2 plus 1 equals blank, but I can also have blank plus 1 equals 3, or I could have 2 plus blank equals 3, that they are all the same problem. That we want to make sure that we give students this idea that there doesn't have to be a blank, that there doesn't have to be any stress behind having variables. And we don't want to have the stress behind thinking things through. And we start that all the way down at K2. Computational thinking, having them plan out what are patterns, what are loops, are really important. How do we use loops, and how do we think about different activities? One of the things that we can always have kids do is dance. If you look at any of the dances that are out there that are, I'm going to show my age, like the electric slide or the Macarena or the Cupid shuffle or any of the country line dances, they all live in this concept of looping and having specific steps at specific times. We really want to have those K2 come up and think about it. We can use we can use dances like eyes, ears, knees, and toes. We can have them play that and see how they repeat their actions. We can start building in that relationship that you have small loops and large loops. We have patterns within what we do. You can pattern out your day. We can have them pattern out their day now and think about what is their day like now? How do they go through things? We have all created this new cycle of how we live during the quarantine, during this period. How is it that they've decided, how is it for them? Is breakfast, lunch, and dinner at certain times? Do we have different routines that we're following? And thinking routines, that is another really big piece to this. No, we're going to look at all the different grade levels. So here's 3 to 5. Again, I'm talking fact families and introducing different fact families to students. We really want multiple representations, and that's what that should have said. Multiple representations are so key to this. It allows them to see that there are different relationships between numbers. We want to focus on manipulatives in a lot of ways as we move forward through this. Any ways we can move forward in using manipulatives is extremely powerful for students. And we want to support that place value understanding. So if we are supporting place value, if we get kids to really understand what is place value, then life becomes easier at the upper grades. Again, we're going to look at patterns. This time we're looking at number patterns. We're looking at how things work. I want them to see the patterns of how problems work and the way they build problems. And we want to start introducing formulas. As we teach geometry, we really want to look at how formulas fit in and start talking about variables and that letters can mean numbers, and stop the fear of when kids get to the first expressions that letters and numbers can be the same thing. I've met a lot of students who've had issues the second you start putting in letters into their equations. And we also want to really consider graphing and being very clear, and even using the algebraic terms for our graphs, the x-axis, the y-axis. We want to start talking that way with younger and younger students. And because we're teaching them other words for these, I want them to start using math terms as young as possible. So when we're talking 6-12, and I'm lumping this all together as secondary, but based on any questions you guys have, we can open this up and I can pull Corinne in. We want to start very much with the basics, and we want to build fluency in those basics. We want them to combine like terms. We want them to really understand the distributive property. And the distributive property, the true understanding of that goes all the way back into 3rd grade, where they really have to understand what multiplication means. So it may mean that instead of giving them an equal sign in a multiplication problem, we use them like expressions where they have to write out what multiplication, what it actually means. Because I think that is so important for kids. I really want to gain fluency in finding factors. So that means we are going to constantly work on that fluency. We want to make sure that their factors are clear, and then we start moving to equations. I'm going to go slow to go fast when it comes to this age group. I want to lock down those skills before I move on to anything else. And then I'm going to go into problem solving. And I'm going to give an alternate way is using the area model when I'm doing things. So as I think about this, I'm going to connect area, the area model, I'm going to connect graphing, I'm going to get fluency, which is very much a high speed, high correct population, high speed, high correct use of equations. And then I'm going to start using simulations. I'm going to live in Desmos, and I'm going to live in PhET simulations. And these are really powerful for our upper grade students, our upper grade classes. So this is one example from Desmos. And we can look at these different graphs and have, this is a younger example, but explain what this means and have students explain it. I may have them do it on a discussion board. I may have them do it on Flipgrid. On PhET simulations, there's a whole math section. Here's one example. And I'm going to have them explore, and this looks like science, but I may need them to understand what elevation means. So I can have these widgets that allow them to explore what quantity means and lock down what that means. But these have high, middle, and lower level ones. So as we work through these different ideas, I'm also going to use illustrative mathematics, and I will probably also consider using illustrative mathematics has a lot of power within this as well. Also within the SERP Institute, I am going to use algebra by example. And the SERP Institute has these great products of worked problems, and it has students look at each of these problems and explain why they're right or why they're wrong. Algebra by example is their 8th grade. They have some ninth grade items. They have some 6th and 7th grade items. So I'm going to pass it over to Corinne if she has anything to add, and please ask any questions you have. I know I went through a number of different things.
Hi, everyone. I'm sorry, I was trying to type in that SERP Institute into the chat because we did not add it onto this slide. And one of the things that you'll notice when Matt had clicked on the illustrative mathematics, that is a really good website for those of you that are doing your planned instruction, not if you're doing review and enrichment. So it depends on what your continuity of ed plan says, but this one does have things that work on the standards of mathematical practice and a lot of problem solving. So if you're looking for those two things as you're doing planned instruction, this is a good place to start. So it kind of depends on what your ed plan is at your district. The other thing that I wanted to say, I did mention in the Q&A when somebody had asked if this is just K through 5, and Matt mentioned it also. We're really just doing a general overview of some resources and some think abouts as you're going along and planning your algebra lessons. If you have deeper questions or more specific questions, please come into our office hours after this and feel free to ask Matt and I whatever. We both have taught at the secondary level various math subjects. So we are there to help you out in any way that you need. If anybody has specific questions now that they want to ask, please also feel free. We can unmute your mic and answer anything that you may have a question about now. You can either put it into the chat or you can ask to be unmuted. Matt, you're still on mute.
That would help. Sorry. This is the LearnOn. This is the end. Sorry about that. I guess you didn't get the last bits that I was saying. So that you have the LearnOn site is here. This is our evaluation link and the Act 48 link, which is already put into the chat. Please let us know if you want to come into our office hours. Feel free, and we will be available to answer specific questions or to be a thought partner. Thank you.